Hello, so this video is for text 3.2 from the Edexcel A-Level Anthology, and it's the eyewitness account written by a young radio operator in the First World War. And here is a linked picture to the main page itself, and we'll have a look at it. So first things to note is really this one here. This is an extract from a memoir, so obviously an extract, memoir, written up version of your diaries that you were keeping at the time, and then it's a collection of those diaries put together later on. And we've got the dates here as well, so obviously it's First World War as well. Sapper is a type of soldier. If you're not familiar with that as a term there, it's involved in more like engineering kind of side of things in a kind of way. It's sorting things out. In this case, it's obviously to do with radio and setting up radio operations and communications. It's kind of technical, like a technical kind of soldier. Then wireless section. It's an interesting term because in the modern world that's undergone change in its meaning. So it's undergone broadening in the modern sense, and then we think of wireless internet, but obviously in those days it's wireless is referring to radio. So just specifically in those days, but since then it's undergone broadening, which is the term for it. Then we have a discourse marker at the start here. At the age of 18, I crossed to France early in 1917, so we got a discourse marker signalling the first phase, or the next phase of this memoir, of these memories of what he was actually doing. Sapper is there again, and that's military Lexis, as I've explained before. And then we have Royal Engineers wireless section, so it's a part of the army dedicated to the setting up of radio, which at the time, in terms of the context, would have been a new thing, would have been the idea there. We operators only had a vague idea of our likely duties, for the wireless section was only then becoming of use in the trenches. So what you have here, so that's past progressive tense there, was only then becoming of use. So it's a time when it's expressing that this was a period when use of radio in the army was becoming something that was more widely used. So it's a recent development, and it's cutting edge technology for the time there as well. I was sent via Saint Paul to Arras. I was sent, passive voice there, fits in with the military idea. Obviously, I was sent, your superior officers tell you where to go and you go there. So that's why it's got passive voice as well. We don't have to specify who told him to go there because that's a natural mechanism within the army. Your superiors tell you what to do and you do it. And with a fellow operator was led, that's more passive voice there as well, was led. So again, suggests a higher ranking officer is taking you to the place that you're going to go to. Trenches is military Lexis there as well. And then Rockling Corps, we have, again, there's various proper nouns here which locate the text, and actually some of these, like Arras there, these are associated with the First World War too, as if we didn't know that it was already set in the First World War, or well, the memories are from the First World War. Because remember, in terms, again, when we're thinking of voice and everything, this is an authentic account of things that really happened. It is based on memory, so in terms of what the writer says, it may not necessarily be 100% accurate, but there's no reason, in this case, to assume that he's lying about anything. There's no real reason to do that, but human memory can be imperfect. So it's really, in terms of context, it's thinking about to inform, and in terms of his voice, I think we'll describe it as it's an open and honest account of what he actually did in the First World War, as his experiences as a young radio operator. So we're obviously thinking of his age. It's interesting to think of many of you doing your A-levels, of course, are a similar age, and try and think of what the equivalent might be for you in this kind of situation, using cutting edge technology in a really dangerous situation. It's very interesting to consider that. Then there I first experienced the bursting of a shell, and that's more military Lexis as well. Obviously, shell, it's talking about military ordnance, explosives, and I laughed at the frightened manner in which our guide flung himself down when the shell fell about 30 yards away. This verb here, I laughed. This is, again, the connotations of this. Obviously, we know of the horrors of the First World War since then, but he's writing with the perspective of, as a young 18-year-old just gone out there, he's just gone out to France, and he's underestimating the danger that he's experiencing, which is often, it's true of a lot of people. They don't necessarily think of the danger that you're experiencing. But that verb suggests that he's remembering how he felt at that particular time and dismissing it as young and naive and not realising the danger. It was not long before I took to flinging myself down on such occasions. So there is, that's litotes there, so it's understatement, such occasions. An occasion might be like a garden party or a picnic or something like that, but such occasions, he's using it, deliberate understatement there, which he's deliberately juxtaposing this dynamic verb, I took to flinging myself down. This is all juxtaposed with that dismissive, light-hearted reaction that he offered earlier on. There's a link between those two. When our guide led me into a trench filled waist deep with muddy water, we all associate this with the First World War as well, muddy water, mud, trenches. There's lots of military lexis associated with the First World War as well. I could not believe he was serious. Parenthesis here, and I hesitated. That creates a voice of informality, like he's telling you the story. It's like he's telling it, even though it's written form. So there's an element of multimodality there as well. I was wearing brand new riding breeches, puttees and boots. However, so this is all uniform reference again, more military lexis there, and again it dates to the time. However, I waded we associate that verb, that dynamic verb, with going into water or mud or whatever as well. And it was 17 days before my boots touched dry soil again. Sounds like hyperbole, but it probably actually isn't. That is most likely literally true. We were left in a muddy dugout, more mud there as well. Dugout's military lexis associated with the little small foxhole that you set up to hide in, as a mini base effectively. I had Rockland Claw with an officer in his Batman. Tempted to talk about Batman. It's not Batman in the sense of the superhero. There is the pragmatics of this. It's kind of like a class thing, and if you've seen things like Downton Abbey and things like that, then what would happen a lot of the time in the First World War is that if you were more upper class or an aristocrat, you would often be automatically put into a higher rank than anyone else. It wasn't based on a meritocracy really like the modern army is. It's a sort of weird. The First World War is a kind of midway point between the old world and the modern world, and in terms of how the army functions. So in some ways it's hanging on to these old systems where an aristocrat could come in at a higher rank, and the higher ranking you were as an aristocrat, you'd most likely find yourself brought in at a higher rank. And I'm a long way round here to saying, but like his Batman is really, it's kind of a borrowing from like the world of cricket really, where he would have someone like a helper really. And so often you would get like an aristocrat going in and their butler would join them in the First World War as a rank that would enable them to stay near their lordship or whatever. It's just, you see the kind of thing in Downton Abbey, it's that kind of idea if you've seen that. So waiting for the attack, we spent our time experimenting with a small British field set, the trench set, and we still had no idea of our purpose. So there's more parenthesis as well there, and it adds a little bit of detail. It's a specific kind of wireless set, as in radio set, that he's talking about. And another discourse marker. Then on April the 5th, we were called into Arras, where a RE officer, that is actually Royal Engineers, so that's an initialism for Royal Engineers, and that's kind of like specialist lexis there as well. And you've got a little colloquialism, a reported speech as a colloquialism, put us wise. The attack was to be made within the next few days. That's passive voice as well, because the attack can't make itself. So the attack was to be made by whoever it was going to be, that particular regiment. Within the next few days, the infantry, another piece of military lexis as well, the infantry. So that all contributes to the voice, the expertise, the memory, the detail shows that he was there and he was in the army and he knows all these different things. Were to advance undercover, that's another piece of military lexis, of a formidable barrage, that's more military lexis as well, is like a bombardment of explosives, of shells, or mortar fire or whatever. And each wave was to be, that's military lexis too actually, wave, was to be provided, passive voice, with a wireless station. So a lot of this with the passive voice, it suggests military hierarchy, where there's someone higher up than you telling you what to do and where to go and how to do it and what you're meant to be doing there. The Rock and Claw station was to go over with the first infantry wave, and that's more military lexis as well, infantry. So we've then got, sorry, it's a little bit blurry, but it should still be legible, especially if we've zoomed in. And we've got this exclamatory minor sentence here. The Rockland Core Station, that was Hewitt and I. So it's actually kind of hyperbolic in many ways to call it station, because it's actually only, that was Hewitt and I, and an officer, it was only 3 soldiers. 4 infantrymen were to assist us in carrying our weighty apparatus, the set, accumulators, dry cells, coils of wire, earth mats, ropes, and other details. This is all specialist lexis, and it's a syndetic list because we've got "and" there at the end. But specialist lexis associated with radio equipment of that era, wireless equipment of that era. We returned to Rockland and sent many practice messages to our directing station at Arras. That night, one of our aerial masts was shattered. That's passive voice because the emphasis, well, it's by the enemy. The emphasis, the most important thing is that the area was being destroyed, not necessarily who destroyed it. They don't know exactly who destroyed it, we just know it was the enemy. So it's going to be the Germans in this case in the First World War. And we were instructed to erect another. Notice, what's that? It's more passive voice. We were instructed to erect another. So, again, suggesting military hierarchy. We had no reserve mast, but fortunately we found a large crucifix nearby. So that works actually as a discourse marker, thinking about it. That's it, said the officer. So we have some direct speech here, which may not be an exact quotation of what happened because of the nature of memory, but we can assume that it is. We can just acknowledge these things as we're writing about it. Hewitt, climb up there and attach the aerial as high as possible. So we have a quotation here, and it's an imperative. Again, it's suggesting military hierarchy, and he's recounting this particular event. Hewitt clambered up over the figure of Christ. Clambered, connotations as a dynamic verb of roughly climbing, doesn't it? It's like imprecise to clamber. Just as a German machine gun swept the line, that's metaphorical, and the very lights revealing Hewitt distinctly. That's specialist lexis as well, so it's obviously a particular type of light of that era. He soon fell into a depth of slime, unpleasant connotations there, of the word slime. Frightened, emotive lexis as well, but unhurt. It was our first experience of enemy machine gun fire. You tried, the officer pointed to me, so another imperative, suggesting military hierarchy. It is an eerie sensation to climb over an effigy of Jesus, to dig your feet into any parts of the figure, offering foothold, to hold on to the outstretched arms and breathe onto the downcast face. This is all really juxtaposition here, is I think the best thing to say about it. We've got a compound sentence, we can talk about it as well, but the idea is that it's juxtaposing this grim military desperate situation with a holy icon. That's something that's a very strange, uncomfortable, eerie, unusual juxtaposition that war will bring about, effectively. And that's part of his memory of what he's talking about, what he's reflecting on. And then we have to hear the German machine gun tat-tatting all around, a bit of onomatopoeia, nice to see a bit of onomatopoeia there, but again that suggests the sound of it, the German machine gun tat-tatting all around. Then, failing to secure the rope, discourse marker, I slid down and we returned to the dugout with our officer extremely annoyed. Again, military hierarchy, thinking of there. Early the next morning, discourse marker again, we secured the aerial to the ruins of a building. On April 7th, our officer laid a plan of the German sector opposite us on the table, and he detailed our instructions. So again, he's referring to our officer, first person plural possessive determiner in this case, and officer military hierarchy. At a particular tree stump far over in the enemy's blue line, again this is specialist terms that really will make sense more to, well, really the writer of the text really. We were to erect a station as rapidly as possible and transmit any messages handed in by the officers engaged in the attack. And we've got that's in infinitive form there, and it sounds precise and militaristic as well. I felt intensely relieved that I was to be given an opportunity of doing something useful, and a feeling that at last I was to play a real part in the Great War. So that's a metaphor, play a real part in the Great War. The Great War is the term for the First World War that was used at the time, because they didn't know there was going to be a Second World War, so it was called the Great War, and then up until the Second World War it was called the Great War. It still gets referred to that occasionally, but it's, but when there was a Second World War, it became a bit obsolete as a way of describing the First World War. I found that Hewitt too experienced this sense of relief. So there's a sense in the voice of this as well. He refers to Hewitt a couple of times. There's a sense of camaraderie there as well, and looking out for your mates, really, your comrades in arms, looking out for them as well. So we have one thing I've just thought of as well is think about the officer though, compared to the Hewitt as the lower ranking fellow soldier. The officer, either he's forgotten the name or he's deliberately kept him nameless or for whatever reason, but I think that contributes to that sense of voice with the idea of camaraderie with your fellow soldiers. I think the officer is another soldier, of course, as well, but of a similar rank. I think that's where that's coming from on there. So hopefully you found that useful, and there's plenty of others to listen to, and thank you very much for listening.